Hello and welcome to Weird Careers. I'm your host, E.T. All over the globe, yes, it's round, people get up and go to work, but there are some fun and unusual ones out there, and I'm here to explore them. Please join me on my journey around the globe and dive deep into these jobs. Please follow me on the socials at Weird Careers Podcast, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and the show itself on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and much more. If you think you have a weird or interesting job, stay tuned to the end of the show on how to get a hold of us. And today we have Mike Cameron, who is a professional prop maker and special effects costume maker.
Yep.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty, Reader's Digest, what do you do?
So I am a prop and costume maker for movies. I started out with design in product design, and eventually kind of morphed into this film career that I've been traveling around the world for the past 7 or 8 years, working at some of the biggest productions in the world, and trying to become the best possible fabricator and designer I can.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
And so how did you get into this industry?
So I started out as an industrial designer. I was doing product design, and the school that I went to was very much on the lines of, through good design, you can change the world. And then you get out into the real industry, and your boss does not give a shit. And
True.
So I realized to a certain point that if I'm going to be beholden to the capitalist system, I want to be building and designing stuff that I'm passionate about, and not tables and chairs and commercial lighting and stuff like that. So it started out with building random kind of props and little commission jobs and stuff like that, and eventually built up enough of a portfolio where I met somebody in Australia that just happened to work in film.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh shit, this is the guy I need to impress. And so I had my portfolio on my phone, showed it to him, and he's like, oh, call my buddy in Sydney. And he was the prop master on Alien Covenant.
Oh, very cool.
And so I just hit the ground running on a large production, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
That's good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
So I was looking at your resume. The Boys, Avatar, was it The Way of the Water?
Number 2.
Way of the Water.
Yeah.
Rings of Power, Thor Ragnorok, and Alien Covenant. Now, tell me, what would a typical day on set look like? Just walk us through it.
That's the fun part, is you never quite know. I mean, even with I ran the digital fabrication facility on Rings of Power, and I had a prioritized list of what needed to be done for tomorrow, let's say.
Yeah.
And every day my boss would come in with new updates because they've changed the shooting schedule, or the director had a weird dream and suddenly he's been struck with inspiration, and we're going to cut that and we're going to remake this and we're going to refocus something else. So it's a lot of putting out fires and stuff like that, where you got to think on your feet. You got to manage your time well, especially if you're dealing with the 3D printers and the different systems that need machine time. You have to be able to plan that and have the machines working while you're working on something else. On the average, let's say day on Rings of Power or Avatar, it tended to be you have your desk set up with all your tools, and you have kind of a main thing you're working on for the day, and then so it might be the assault rifle for Colonel Quedrich. I can't even pronounce the guy's name. The main bad guy in Avatar. And so I'll be working on that throughout the day, sanding it, cleaning it up, getting it ready for paint. But then I'll glue some stuff together, and let's say it's slow set epoxy. Yeah. So then with that downtime, I would go and work on something else.
Okay.
And so you're constantly kind of trying to deliver stuff, stay ahead of the schedule, because as they had released the shooting schedule, we have assets that we need to get ready, usually 3 to 4 days in advance. So, if worse comes to worse and something happens, you do have a little bit of wiggle room, but you never really want to be going past that 3-day safety margin threshold.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, I got to ask, did you work on the penis?
I didn't. Oh, on The Boys?
On The Boys. Did you work on the big penis?
No, but my boss did. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, and so he was very proud of that. And actually on Rings of Power, my head of department had just gotten off Ash versus the Evil Dead.
Oh, cool.
And he made the demonic colon that comes out of the cadaver and strangles the guy and stuff. And so he was really proud of it. He's like, oh yeah, I made this massive colon because it's the interior of the rig was a tentacle rig where there's discs, and you basically have a central spine and then 3 or 4 axes of wires, and you pull the wire one way and it pulls it this way or this way, and so it's just an engineering project with this puppetry and stuff like that, because some of the props are really beautiful and intricate, but it's a dumb block essentially, you know. Whereas when you get into special effects and animatronics and costumes, there's so many different competing materials and movements and stuff like that you need to plan for. Like, you know, can I raise my arms, or are the shoulder guards going to be too big? And like securing hard components to fabric, because sometimes like certain things don't work or they fail too easily. They don't have the durability. Certain glues don't stick to certain materials, and so you have to have this like really broad scope of material knowledge, and then like, you know, what will work, what's gonna stand up, you know, like, is this just a hero shot where he looks out into the sunset, or is this a battle scene where we need stuff that's going to be rubberized because the stunt guy needs to be able to like be comfortable and move around?
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Was there any schooling or like specific training that you had to do to get into this?
Yeah, so I went to OCAD for industrial design.
Nice.
So I was doing product design, but a lot of that was design thinking and is being strategic with your assets and like the way you go about solving any problem that you're trying to solve. So that kind of laid like good soft skills as the base. And then we also did our fabrication, where it was like prototyping. So, you know, like an injection mold might cost $100,000 to get the dies for the mold done.
Wow.
And so if you're trying to sell that to a company, you need to be able to make a one-off before those molds are made and sell them on, this is an appearance model. This is what the final piece will look like, even though you don't have the final, you know, industrial molds to make the final version. You have to be able to sell them on that. So that prototyping skill went nicely into, okay, we'll now make a sword instead of a coffee maker, you know?
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, have you designed your own hero prop? And if you can explain to our audience what a hero prop is, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. So a hero prop is basically something that the main people in the scene are interacting with. So again, like the hero pulls out his sword, whatever the case may be, but it's in the foreground, it's high detail, and that's generally the one where like the form and finish needs to be perfect, because any flaws, any 3D print lines are going to show up, especially if the lighting conditions are bright.
And with 4K and getting into 8K and stuff like that, you pick up every detail.
100%. Yeah. So as far as design and build, I haven't done a lot of design in film yet. I'm trying to get into more of like because I am a trained designer, do more of that side. But I got my start in fabrication basically, so I'm building a lot of this stuff. But a lot of times they'll give me like a back of the napkin sketch, and it's like, okay, the art director has signed off on this, but like you need to take this jumble of lines and refine it down and make a finished product and stuff. Cool. So on this is not really a hero prop per se, but on Pacific Rim Uprising, we were given concept art for the armored personnel carriers, and they were beautiful, but they were like, they didn't make sense from the manufacturing methods that we were using. So I had to take the gesture of it and turn it into something that was more manufacturable.
Very neat.
Yeah, so a lot of it's like that sort of thing, where there's the play between, you know, okay, the art department has signed off on this, but like this is like, if you really want that little cleft in the detail, it's going to take double the amount of time to build it. So does this need to be here, or can we have that back and forth dialogue to make it easier for the team to build, especially when you're working on tight timelines or tight budgets and stuff like that? That's part of it, where you're not just an automaton making stuff. There has to be that back and forth discussion.
Of course,
and like any good production will have that. Whereas some of the other ones, it's a unidirectional feed of information, which can work, but tends to lead to a lot of like, okay, we need to redo that. And it's like, well, if we had just had the conversation earlier, we could have avoided this problem altogether.
Exactly. So, this is beautiful. What you're wearing is absolutely. Tell us what this is.
So this is the BioShock Big Sister. So I have my helmet and then a couple other pieces off camera. But the other armor that I have, I'm up on 9-inch stilts, and I have like an orc power claw.
Wow!
So it's big and it's bulky, and so I wanted to do something that was like a little bit more practical. It's clearly not still super practical. It's hot. I'm sweating through it. But I've actually taken this to like nightclubs and stuff like that. Cool. Spend the entire night like bumping into people, and then with the helmet, like I have fans, but the fans broke.
Oh no!
And so it fogs up, and so I have edge lit acrylic that's foggy, and so I basically just see like blobs moving in front of me, you know, and it's like, oh sorry, that blob is a person, like my bad, you know. So it's not super practical, but again, it's like a little bit more comfortable. It's hot, but it's not heavy. Everything is plastic. So
Okay.
I've had police stop me on the TTC and been like, "What are you wearing?" And then they tap on it and they're like, "Oh, it's not real metal." And so
it looks metal. Like it looks. It looks like you would not know that's plastic. That looks really good. That's
thank you. Yeah, so I'll give you a secret tip to do fake metal, so that your audience can know.
Yeah.
So basically, what you do is you take rattle can chrome and you put that down as your base, and then water-based acrylic over top of that with like an airbrush.
Oh, okay.
And then you take sticky tape and you rip the outer layer off, and that way you get realistic paint chips. Because so many people paint the base layer and then put silver on top of it.
Yeah.
But especially if you're doing like weathering passes on top,
yeah.
the way that the paint settles into the lower layer, or what should be the lower layer, doesn't sell it as real metal. Okay. Whereas the silver is underneath. And then you pull it off, it looks so much more realistic.
That's incredible. Yeah. So how long would something like this take you to make?
I think I'm up to about 400 or 500 hours on this now.
Woo!
Yeah.
That's a lot of hours.
So it's a big investment. Like, there are cosplayers that can pump out a costume for every con.
Yeah.
But obviously they're not to this finished level.
Yeah, of course.
And this is mainly made out of Sintra and polystyrene. So I've used these are all vacuum formed, and then the helmet and the top of the tank are blow molded. Almost how you make blow molded. Almost how you make like a pop bottle. But basically, you heat up the sheet of plastic, and I'll have like a ring like holding the edge of it, basically.
Yes.
And then you inflate it while it's still hot. Then you get half hemisphere.
That's so neat.
Yeah.
Kind of like how they make these things.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like thermoforming essentially.
That's awesome.
So like that stuff's great, but again, it's a slow process for setup and everything like that. So like, EVA foam armor is awesome, and you can make some beautiful effects, but it generally doesn't hold the same level of crisp detail and texture. And so like that's what kind of like I have a talk that I do on cosplaying strategically for the film industry portfolio, where EVA foam armor is great, but it won't sell into a film industry career because they don't use that material. It tends to be for like prototyping, or if you have kind of like small armor plates on like on the boys, we'll use a little bit of EVA foam to kind of pad stuff out. But like if you're gonna do film professionally, you need to look at kind of the more high-end fabrication techniques and stuff like that. And as far as accessibility goes, because not everyone has like a super high-end 3D printer.
Oh, exactly.
There's a program called Pepakura. Pepakura.
Okay.
It's a freeware, free software where you can rip video game files and it turns it into like a flat pattern that you can print out, fold up, and create these complex shapes.
That's very neat.
Yeah, and so I always often say for that, because it's like a lot of people, again, for accessibility purposes, you don't have a big budget.
Of course.
That's something where you can sell your understanding of technical, very complex forms and be able to pump something out on a very low budget. Wow. But a prop master is going to look at that and be like, I see the attention to detail and the technical mindset that's used to create that, and often that might be a more attainable portfolio piece than doing 3D printing or a huge like foam armor suit or whatever the case may be.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what's the best part about what you do? What's your favorite thing about your job?
Like it's high highs and low lows. I mean, like my baseline work week is 60 to 60 hours.
Wow.
Usually.
And
it can go a lot more than that. Like I did exosuits in Beijing right as COVID was happening.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Yeah.
100-hour weeks. Yeah, like sleeping in the studio basically.
That's insane.
But you can't keep that up long term. But for the short stints, it's fine. But it's like I think seeing the joy that people get out of it is what makes it worth it for me. Because it's fun to sit there with like, hey, like this rifle is about to go like be used by a famous actor or whatever.
Yeah.
And like that's nice. I'm sure it pads the ego a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's like putting on cosplay and having like kids like stop in their tracks and be like, Mom, look, and be like, hey, like you can do this too, and like inspiring the next generation. That's super important. And that's what I get out of it the most, I think.
And with every good part about your job, there's always a downfall.
Yep.
What are some of those?
Well, currently Disney is trying to starve me.
That's not fun.
So that sucks, and it is the lack of job security in the industry. You put your heart and soul into this. You're at the top of the industry, and then they finish, and it's like, okay, you're done. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
pardon.
It's okay. We're an 18+ show.
Okay, cool. And it's like, like it's up to you to find the next job and to network and stuff like that. And it's like, that's, sometimes it's great, like schedules work out and you roll from one to the next. It's awesome. And like the Toronto film industry does a good job of hedging their bets and having a lot of mid-level shows. Yeah. So that way if one leaves, everyone's not out of work,
Exactly.
Whereas what happened in New Zealand is 90% of the industry and studio space was on Rings of Power.
Yep.
And then they got better bribes, tax rebates from London, England, and moved the entire production to London, England. I lost my work visa. Like, that's the only reason I'm here, because we were promised 6 years worth of work.
Yeah.
And then, end of season 1, hey, like, love our New Zealand crew. Couldn't be more happy. Love you guys to death. See you in a couple months. That was the Friday. Saturday, fuck you all. We're moving to the UK.
Oh,
yeah.
Sucks.
And half of the industry is still unemployed because this is all planned out years in advance. And so you can't get another big production in there like in the last minute. And so that's the hard part, is the working realities. Yeah. And like the long hours, if you're passionate, are less of a problem, but still an issue. On the first unit and like in general in film, which is like the shooting crew, everyone that's on set when you're shooting, the divorce rate is 70%.
Wow.
Yeah. And so if you're going to be in this industry, try to marry someone that's in the industry or understands at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it exacts a toll, like
really, absolutely.
Mental and physical health and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's like high highs, low lows. And if you love it, it's worth it, but don't go into it with a false idea of like, oh, it's going to be awesome. We're going to hang out with actors all day and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there are moments like that, but they're few and far between. And if you don't love the work, then it's hard. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, think back to yourself as like little 8-year-old Mike.
Yep.
What did he want to be when he grew up?
A marine biologist or a paleontologist.
Isn't that interesting? Look where you are now.
Yeah. So not quite there, but I got the space tattoos at least. Yeah, exactly. And I love scuba diving and fossil hunting, and that's like I don't need a PhD to do that. So I still get my fix at least. But like, especially with the tumultuous industry the way it is right now, I'm actively looking to move to museum exhibit design and fabrication.
Nice.
So it's like then I'm getting a little bit more of the science and the design side of things, but then I can still do my fabrication and stuff. So, and again, you're a government employee with a salary, as opposed to this freelancing stuff where it's like I'm not that old, but I'm tired. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
it's like,
understand that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Mike.
No worries.
Real pleasure. And if you have a weird or interesting job, make sure to email us at weirdcareerspodcast@gmail.com. Please make sure to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Until next time, I'm ET. Cheers.